You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. You wanted it. You got it. A radio program that helps teach you options trading inside and out, basic to complex. This is Options Boot Camp. Whether you want to learn how to protect your portfolio, generate income, or even become a master of volatility, your Options Boot Camp drill instructors, Mark Longo and Dan Passarelli, will break it all down for you. Options Bootcamp is brought to you by tastytrade. Ready to shred your paper trades? Then trade at tastytrade, the broker that gives you what you need to make your own way. Get smarter every day with options education and research tools. Analyze your risks clearly with a potential profit and loss graph. Chart your way with hundreds of indicators. Make the numbers make sense and find the opportunities only you can see. Trade it with fewer clicks on an easy-to-use platform. Mobile, desktop, web. Supported by a trade desk with decades of combined experience. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose, you trade. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. tastytrade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. Fall in boot. It's time to get into peak options trading shape. It's time for Options Boot Camp.
All right, everybody, welcome to Options Boot Camp, the premier options educational program. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which so many of you are binging these days. Coming to you a little bit early on Education Wednesday, changing up our usual bat time. Don't blame me. Blame the black-hatted one. He's always pulling the strings with his evil Machiavellian schemes behind the scenes. But nonetheless, coming at you early here on a little bit of Education Wednesday. Remember, if you want to join us, we got an awesome content triple header for you in store today. Early OBC, a little bit later with the futures rundown at its same bat time, same bat channel. Then we finish off the day with an awesome pro Q&A session, none other than our good buddy, Mr. Dr. Vix, a.k.a. Mr. Russell Rhodes, tackling all your questions. I got to imagine a lot of them coming in on the vol side. I've already seen what you folks have been sending in, and a lot of vol-related questions. You want to talk vol, VIX, all the VIX ETPs, the futures, all that crazy stuff. Get them in now. Only one place to go to join that. That is theoptionsinsider.com/pro. That also gets you options oddities at the end of the week. That also gets you participation in all of our live streams. That also gets you coming up soon, couple of days. The January Pro Trading Crate going out. You folks just cleaning us out. Luckily, the vault is pretty stocked with some really cool stuff. Each one is bespoke. No two Pro Trading Crates are the same. They all have cool stuff. Sometimes I'm like, man, we're giving that away, huh? That's pretty cool. We could probably sell that. But no, we give it to you folks. That's the kind of nice people we are. The optionsinsider.com/pro. And speaking of nice people, when I speak of nice people, I don't necessarily think of this person. Yet nonetheless, I am joined by him, the black-hatted one himself, Mr. Dan Passarelli from Market Taker Mentoring, what the cool kids call to Mr. P, how goes your earlier Education Wednesday, sir?
Oh, everything's pretty darn swell over here.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. You know, it's always swell as well. If I like to rhyme all the time, Mr. P, is that we got a little bit of the old mail call. So let's get to it.
Mail call. Time to look at questions submitted by our listeners.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Mail Call, the portion of the show where you folks take the reins, your questions, your comments, your insights, your pearls of wisdom. We also turn the spotlight back on you with some fun questions of the week. Dan, we got two hot ones cooking right now. I want to get your thoughts on these. These were inspired earlier in the week by the kind of wild kickoff to the week. If you're listening after the fact, as I know many of you are out there, listeners, then this week we are recording right during the madness of all the fun DeepSeek AI kerfuffle that kind of kicked off this week and really sent the markets into a tailspin. The notion of, oh my goodness, maybe AI doesn't have to be this really expensive proposition. Maybe US companies and Silicon Valley don't have the insurmountable lead a lot of other people assumed they had for years. Maybe you don't have to spend $1 bazillion and buy infinite amounts of expensive equipment to do this. Chinese startup created sounds like a pretty reliable model out there with $6 million and access to AWS and a few other things. So kind of undercuts a lot of the assumptions that have been carrying big names like NVIDIA and indeed the rest of the market to the stratosphere for the last couple of years. We've really been riding on two things: the Fed and rates, which we do have a rate decision imminent today as well, listeners, but really on the back of the panacea that is AI to solve all the ills, not just of the market, but of society. And so at that point, you can justify almost any valuation for names like NVIDIA. But this DeepSeek thing, Dan, maybe called some of that into question. So we thought we would ask our audience this week, a two-parter. We said, is DeepSeek the canary in the coal mine for the end of the AI boom? Quite simply, will the SPX close positive on the year? Yes, no, or who cares, I'm in crypto, or who cares, I'm just slinging vol. And a corollary to that, is DeepSeek the canary in the coal mine? Will it crush NVIDIA? Will NVIDIA close positive on the year? So a two-parter, Mr. Dan. What is your vote in both of those, and what do you think our audience is voting for?
Well, I don't think that. I mean, I think that DeepSeek will have and continue to have an effect on chip makers, especially NVIDIA. Because, I mean, it just barely needs any chips comparatively. But, I mean, as far as, I don't know what you want to call it, AI products or GPTs or whatever, that just becomes a competition thing of who can make the best one, do the most with it, and that kind of thing. And, maybe it appears that since DeepSeek ramped up so fast that American companies are on the ropes, but we have a competitive spirit here in the U.S. and I don't know. I mean, I think that that's just another regular competitive threat to like OpenAI and Microsoft and that kind of thing. But yeah, NVIDIA, it could be a problem. So how that affects the S&P 500, well, it's capitalization weighted index. And so some people are aware of this, but some people aren't. The reason why the S&P 500 was so strong last year is largely because of a handful of stocks, and NVIDIA is one of them. So it certainly is likely to weigh on the S&P 500, but, not in a catastrophic sort of way. I don't know if I would go from saying, oh, I thought it was going to be up 10%. Now I think it's going to be down 10%. I don't know. I would have to do some math and think about how to discount that and come up with a good value. But I still think there's a likely chance the S&P 500's up at the end of the year. I think that was the original question, right?
Yes, NVIDIA and the S&P, both, will they close positive or negative on the year?
Yeah, well, S&P, I still say positive. NVIDIA, oh, geez, man, maybe not NVIDIA, maybe not.
It's funny. Your buddy, the Rock Lobster on the option block yesterday, pointed out that, we were at 150 in NVIDIA just a week and change ago. Now we're about 25 points below that, right around 125, actually 123 now, got below it. Even if it sold off 50 points to 100, it's still a freaking pricey stock. Even right now, having sold off, 20 odd percent, if not more, it's still got a PE of nearly 50. And that's all carried on the back of these assumptions, right? That there really is no multiple too high for AI. Companies have to spend everything. And
I don't know, man. Apple's PE is like 38 or something. So sure, it's 25% higher. But look at Tesla. Look at Palantir.
Those are all wild too. Where Nvidia goes, those other names will follow. Maybe not Apple. Apple seems to do its own thing. Everyone lit them up for not doing enough in AI, and then they rallied the other day when everything fell apart because they didn't do enough in AI. So Tim Cook looks like a genius now. His grand strategic vision to be late to the AI party seems to, at least for right now, be working out. But interesting stuff, listeners. Obviously, this question is still live. You folks can weigh in if you're listening in the near release window over there at Options. If you're listening months, years down the road, hey, welcome. We love y'all. You probably know the answer to all these AI questions. You can come back from the future and tell us. But that said, you can always go over at Options. There's always a question of the week waiting for you on some hot topic. And right now, Dan, our audience, they're kind of all over the place. Right now, for the question of will the S&P close positive on the year, exactly 50% are saying no. 31.6% say yes. 13.2% don't care because they're slinging vol. And 5.3% don't care because they're slinging crypto, Dan. So they're off doing their own thing. And then interestingly enough, it was even higher. It was like 68% yesterday were saying the S&P was going to close down. And weirdly enough, that same percentage right now is saying NVIDIA will close up on the year. Heck yes, 68%. Hell no, 31.9%. So I don't know. Our audience is all over the place. S&P is going to get annihilated, but somehow NVIDIA closes positive on the year, Dan. What do you think about that scenario?
That NVIDIA closes positive on the end of the year?
Yeah, with S&P closing down.
I'll take the other side of that binary.
Yeah, I think I would too. But I'm never one to second guess our listeners, Dan. They are the ultimate arbiters at the end of the day. But there still has a couple of days left in these polls. Listen, I think these answers will shake out. I don't see a scenario where NVIDIA is robustly positive and the S&P is aggressively down. But hey, that crazier things have happened out there, listeners. Speaking of crazy, we asked you just earlier this week, we saw a big print of the Feb 22 calls going up for 75 cents. 75,000 of them traded. We asked you quite simply, for 75 cents, are you a buyer? Are you a seller? Are you not interested? Or you maybe prefer it in a vertical? So maybe you buy a lower strike, maybe 18, and then you sell the 22s for 75. 46.7%, so nearly half of you said you want to buy those straight up, which looked a little bit better after Monday's kerfuffle. Then 26.7% say you prefer it in a vertical. I think I'd probably go that way as well. Help defray some of your outlay for a meatier, more relevant strike. And then 20% is not interested at that price, and 6.7% say you want to sell them, which is kind of fascinating out there. Mr. Dan, the folks are waiting with bated breath. They have been for some time. Do you think you can regale us with an MTM question of the week, sir?
Yes, I can.
All right, then let me fire up your themes, sir, while you get ready. We have to do it officially. All right, here we go.
And now, it's the moment you've been waiting for. It's time for the Market Taker Question of the Week.
All right, listeners, it's been a few weeks since we were live, so I know you're all jonesing for your fix of a little MTM action. Mr. P, what you got for us this week?
All right, so I get this question every now and then, and it's, what strategies do I trade the most? Okay, and I feel like this is a good question to talk about, not because it really matters what strategies I trade the most. I mean, who really cares? But I think my answer can be very helpful. So for me, the strategies I trade the most are wheel trades. That is the topic of the book that I'm currently in the process of writing. Wheel trades, earnings trades, and then income trades. Why? Well, because wheel trades, those are almost exclusively in my IRA, my investment trades. And, I look at them every day for, 10, 15 minutes. So just by definition, that one's the most common because, I know exactly what to do. I have a perfect system down for it, and I do, and I look at it. As far as earnings trades, that one also I've thought through a very logical step-by-step system. That's our total earnings domination class. And then income trades, same thing. I built some tools for finding them. So like the reason why I trade the trades that I trade most frequently are because like they're time tested, they're tried and proven. And I worked on a very, very, very specific trading plan for them. And so that's why I trade those most often.
There you go, listeners. You can always hit him up over there at MTM if you want to know more about his specific strategies and his use cases for them. Let's get out to the listeners even more, Dan. Let's go out. This is one of our regular listeners, Dan. And you know what? I think he's got some sad news. I think you're going to be sad by this. This is a comment. Don't worry, it's not as fiery as some of our recent email has been. This comes from our old pal Theta Noob. He's written in many times. I recognize that hand. It's just a great handle. Theta Noob. I love it. He says, you also can tell from his question, he's a longtime listener. He says, I know Mark and Dan over there at Options Bootcamp will be disappointed to know that they will no longer be able to use XYZ as a fake ticker, easy for me to say, fake ticker for their examples. It now belongs to Block. Yes, Dan, this is terrible news out here. This came earlier this month, listeners. Block, they were ticker symbol Square. It's a very confusing name. They were Square for a long time, ticker symbol SQ. They decided, Dan, in their infinite wisdom, to horn in on all of our educational examples. And now they are the name that we have all made and lost fortunes in. They have now switched their ticker to XYZ effective last week, January 21st. First off, what regulator would allow this? This ticker should be off limits. I say it for us as a joke because we use a lot of XYZ, but I know for a fact there are a lot of compliance restricted entities out there, like our friends at OIC, for example. They can't touch with a 10-foot pole any single name stock. That's all seen as a recommendation. I know, Dan, when you did the wide world of options on our network here, the lawyers had a lot of edits for you on what you couldn't say after the fact, talking about single names and things. You just can't do that. They can't handle that. So we'll roll with the punches. I like to use XYZ because it's easy and it offends no one. But there are a lot of people out there, Dan, brokers and others, who can't. So now all their existing examples, do they have to go back and change them all? Dan, what a huge pain in the butt. I don't know. I think a regulator should step in and block this. What do you think?
Honestly, there's some validity to that. I mean, it has been the unspoken norm to use that to for compliance reasons because that symbol didn't exist. There are probably compliance managers out there, like the crops at firms who are pulling their hair out. Like, what the heck? We got to change all our material. We got to take down all our blog posts, which is probably a little extreme, but there's a lot of those. They call them crops. They're the compliance people. Who, are really super, super conservative, which, they probably should be. But, oh, my God. Yeah, I think they probably should have kept that as the sacred, just vanilla example that no one else could have.
Yeah, it's ingrained in the culture. A lot of brokers use that OIC content is because they know it's safe. It's compliance approved. So, yeah, it's just stupid. Why does Block need XYZ? Who thinks of Block? It was already a leap to have SQ kind of throwing back to their old Square days. But now they have to just gum up everybody's game, Dan, by going XYZ. So put me down as officially not a fan of this. And thank you for reminding of this Theta Noob. See, our listeners, they love to remind us of bad things, Dan. They take perverse joy in it, I think, at the end of the day. All right, let's keep going. We got more fun comments, Dan. This is another long-time listener and commenter, Ravi Brewster. He's chiming in. You'll recall the epic listener treatise we had an episode ago, Dan, where the listener claimed to love the show and then proceeded to lambaste us for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It was about the whole rule of 16, I believe. Actually should be rule of 20. But at the beginning of that, the one thing we all agreed on was that Talib, our old buddy Nassim Talib, author of Black Swan, maybe got a little bit of a little full of himself. Well, Ravi chimed in. He said, looks like somebody else agrees with you guys. And he sent in a link from someone, Sam Harris. I'm not familiar with him. But Sam Harris wrote an epic treatise on Twitter about our buddy Nassim Talib, Dan. And he goes deep. Allow me to give you the gist of it, listeners. This guy wrote, I know many of you love this guy. He's talking about Talib, obviously. And think he's a genius. I can assure you, none among you are as impressed with his intelligence as he is. This guy is just insufferable, and he's a bully. And most of the time doesn't make any sense, and never knows it. I've actually never witnessed a marriage of incompetence and confidence so fully and grotesquely consummated in the mind of a person with a public platform. This is the most arrogant person I've ever had the misfortune of meeting. When you meet him, you quickly discover that he radiates a sense of grievance from his pores in a way that few people do. It's like a kind of preternatural force of negative charisma.
Oh, wow.
He can convey his contempt for everyone at the table, even in the way he says, pass the salt. He is so convinced that his genius has not been appropriately lauded that he finds some way to communicate this in almost every interaction. He is a child in a man's body. And the mismatch between his estimation of himself and the quality of his utterances is so complete and so mortifying to witness in person that you're just jumping out of your skin. My goodness. Wow. Just slitting the throat and throwing the corpse in and throwing the dirt on it. My goodness. Wow. I guess he did not make a good impression in person, sir. What do you think?
Wow. Yeah. It is funny where, like, I don't know. I'll tell you what, like, honestly, like, I like pretty much everybody until they give me a reason not to like them. And yeah, there's a good handful of people who have. But every once in a while, I meet somebody and for some reason it's like, nope, I don't like that person. And so, yeah, I guess that's what happened. But I will tell you what, like, I've read some Talib stuff and like, here's like a big thing that I think a lot of people's brains don't wrap around is that you can think somebody's smart and think they're a jerk off at the same time. Like, like they're different concepts. You know, they could overlap, but they don't have to overlap. They're just completely different thought patterns. And I do think Talib is smart. I mean, I wish I was half as smart as he thinks he is. But, you know, you read his stuff and yeah, it just does spew just like pompous arrogance, like Jesus, like, come on, man. Well, and I, you know, last thought on that, it is kind of weird. And maybe I'm wrong about him being smart too, because like there is definitely a correlation between an inverse correlation between arrogance and aptitude. You know, like it is I'm 54 while we're recording this. It is my lifetime experience of, you know, meeting hundreds of thousands of people in my life that the more arrogant somebody is, the more insecure and not capable they are. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I haven't had the pleasure, or I guess in this person's estimation, displeasure of meeting Talib in person. I'm one of the few we haven't had on the network, really. So I can't say in person. I've been at a bunch of conferences where he spoke. He definitely has, let's say, radiated that air. So he definitely gave that impression that this person, Sam Harris, was talking about. I definitely get the sense from him, Dan, that he wrote a book like Black Swan that kind of became a mainstream hit almost in spite of it, right? I don't think anyone ever thought that little side financial book would become this mainstream movement of Black Swan. You hear that term all the time now. Most people misuse it. They have no idea what it really means. When you ask people, I remember we did a deep dive on this, I want to say, at least 5 years ago, if not longer. We all thought, Talib's always talking up this Black Swan thing. He must hedge fairly aggressively. He's got the whole world scared out of their wits for the possibility of this extremely rare event. He must really preach a lot of hedging. So we did a deep dive into his trading. It turns out he doesn't. He sells puts all the time. That's what he does in some of his trading out there. And then he does usually leg into ratio. So he sells, out of the money puts and buys a ratio farther out of the money put. So in case the Black Swan does come to pass, he is covered, which is a more logical way of doing it. I like it that way better. But still, he doesn't give that impression in his writing. He makes you sound, once you read his stuff, you're like, oh, I better go build a bunker and go hide in it and buy all puts all the time or go to cash. So yeah, it's a strange thing, this Black Swan phenomenon. I think he's been chasing that ever since. But it's worked out for him. The branding has worked out well. He charges a lot for his speaking engagement, so he does all right. But yeah, I definitely get the same sense that this Harris person does. That, yeah, just an interesting personality. I will leave it at that. All right, let's keep rolling, Mr. Dan. Let's go out to, I like this handle. You might get handle of the week, Mr. Mysterio. I like that, Mr. Mysterio. He wants to know, Dan, this is for you. What is Dan's typical holding period for the straddles that he's buying these days? Also, will he ever short straddles? Thanks much, Mr. Mysterio. So Dan, yeah, you've been Mr. Straddle guy of late. In fact, you're not alone. Overby, whenever he's on my stuff now, is just talking up straddles for days. So the two of you should start a show called the Straddle Bros. But what he wants to know, Mysterio, what is your typical holding period for these straddles that you're buying? And also, will you ever short them, sir?
I mean, my typical holding period for a straddle is, I mean, it's kind of a hot potato if it's in my hands for more than a week. I mean, that said, I buy more time, if my typical holding period is a week, I'm typically buying a month option or straddle. So that, as far as shorting them, seldom, almost never. The most common shorted straddles that I use, which are still very rare, are covered straddles, like in an IRA, and that's usually a strangle, where I own the stock and I want to keep owning the stock, and I sell an out of the money covered call because I, don't think it'll go higher and I'm willing to let it go at that price. And I sell in out of the money put at a lower strike because, it's just been oscillating in a range, and I would buy more if I get filled on it. But as far as just like naked straddle, oh gosh, man, I've done it, but I don't remember the last time I've done it. It's been years, if not a decade.
All right. So there you go. Who was that? I like that handle. Mr. Mysterio. Cool handle out there. Let's get out of here. Dan, this is just something I wanted to share. It's just kind of strange. I don't understand it. We are on a lot of platforms, Dan, including YouTube. But YouTube, I would say, is a very small percentage of our audience. There certainly is a diehard crew that likes to listen to our content on YouTube. And if you like that, we love you all. Stay tuned. Going to be putting some more content out to YouTube to try to feed that YouTube crowd a little bit more. But Dan, for the small percentage of the audience that it is, YouTube makes up the overwhelming percentage of spam nonsense that we get about the shows. It is crazy. You'd think a massive platform like Google would have better ability to detect and filter out spam. One in particular seems to be running rampant. In fact, another one just came in as we were talking, Dan. And they're on all the shows we do. The second I guarantee you we post this show live, Dan, and it hits YouTube, 5 of these will come in. They all are in some flavor of this, Dan, which makes it even more galling that Google can't filter these out because they're all the same. Like this one just came in just a few minutes ago on our Crypto Rundown show that went up earlier this week. They said, thanks for sharing. Quick off-topic question. I have TRC20 USDT in my OKX wallet, and I have the recovery phase. What's the best way to transfer them to Binance? Another one just came in as we're talking here. You're doing a fantastic job. Quick off-topic question. My OKX wallet holds some USDT. I have the seed phrase. What's the best way to send them to Binance? Dan, we get this like 100 times a day on all of our shows. It's the same spam. I don't get it. We've tried to remove it. It comes in on this show. Obviously, we don't talk a lot of crypto on this show, Dan. It's just all over the place. Some spam bot is running wild over there on YouTube. So I thought we'd just point that out just for fun, listeners. So if you're getting that out there on YouTube, it's not just you, listeners. It's everyone. And I don't know why the big G Dan can't filter that out. It drives us crazy. We have to delete them all day long. And it's quite frankly, Dan, it's growing kind of old. I don't like it. So I thought I would share that. Maybe the YouTube gods will pick up on this and do something to spare us. Because every other platform that we're on, the Apple Podcast, the Spotify, you name them, Audible, we don't get spam on those. But for whatever reason, YouTube, just a cesspool of crypto spam. Speaking of YouTube, let's get out of here on a fun comment from you. This actually came in, Dan, from our election night spectacular. Came in from one of our listeners, Redetach, and he just wanted to say, Dan, we all made it. We all survived the election. There was some worry going into that. There was some vol that perhaps we would not survive the evening, Dan, and everything would implode around our ears. And Redetach wanted to let us know, Dan, we all made it. So there we go, Dan. We're ending on a positive, uplifting note. What do you say?
Yeah. There's politics are a weird thing, man. Some people just get so wrapped up emotionally in it that it really affects their logical decisions, which is pretty bad if you're a trader. You got to fight that natural human instinct. But yes, we survived. It passed, just everything went off without a hitch. And so now we're just moving on, and whoever's in charge, we look at what their policies are, and we think about how that affects the market and the economy and such, and we trade off it. It doesn't matter if you like them or don't like them or whatever. So yeah, keep emotions out of your trading, and you will trade better.
All right, Mr. Dan, and if folks want to contact you to learn how to trade a little better, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, make your way on over to markettaker.com. Market as in stock market, taker as in take what is rightfully yours, 2 T's in a row. And join us. You can contact me through there and join our community and lots of other great stuff.
There you go. Check them out, markettaker.com. While you're checking out online communities, head on over to our friends over there at tastytrade. They're bringing the show to you right now, so check them out over there, tastytrade.com/podcast is the place to go to learn more. Obviously, a lot of great options content over there. I wonder if they're struggling with that as well, the whole XYZ conundrum. It afflicts us all in various and different ways, listeners. Again, who would let XYZ slip through their fingers? What regulator allowed this madness? That is just madness. Glad our listeners could just remind us of that and twist the knife a little bit. We know we love you all. And if you're hanging out in the pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. We'll be back at 2 p.m. to hold court on all things futures on the futures run. I got a feeling we're going to be talking some VIX futures on that show, so stay tuned for that. Should be a fun one. And then back again, if that's not enough, listeners, because the producers love you and they hate my voice, back again, 3:30 p.m. Central, with the one, the only Dr. VIX to tackle all of your questions on all things vol. We're going to talk VIX. We're going to talk VXX, UVIX, SVIX, variance, futures, going deep. His secret weekend UVIX trade, how that's faring now that UVIX has gone 10 for 1. All sorts of madness. If that's all crazy gobbledygook to you, then maybe go check out our earlier episodes of this show where we talk a lot about volatility and volatility products. But if that sounds like it's up your alley, check it out over there on the pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. I'm not sure if you'll have time. If you listen to this podcast, it probably will be after that, but it gives you a chance to sign up for next week's fun and, of course, options oddities later this week. And you can still get in today, get your name in the hat now, to participate in the January Pro Trading Crate. I'm looking at what they're going to send out, and it's a good one. You want to get your hands on it. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Back again tomorrow with our usual doubleheader. Got our old pal, the Flowmaster, coming in as well for the option block, as well as This Week in Futures Options Friday, vol views, and then a little bit of options oddities fun. Then we're back again next week, all the way through to next Education Wednesday, another episode of Options Bootcamp. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Options Bootcamp is brought to you by tastytrade. Ready to shred your paper trades? Then trade at tastytrade, the broker that gives you what you need to make your own way. Get smarter every day with options education and research tools. Analyze your risks clearly with a potential profit and loss graph. Chart your way with hundreds of indicators. Make the numbers make sense and find the opportunities only you can see. Trade it with fewer clicks on an easy-to-use platform. Mobile, desktop, web. Supported by a trade desk with decades of combined experience. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose, you trade. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. tastytrade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.